Hi, welcome to the Nest Summit. We're part of Climate Week 2020, and I'm Neil Cohn, a guest host for FinTech TV. I'm excited about our panel today. It's into transformative investment in climate-smart agriculture. We have some of the leaders in some of the leading companies and leading organizations that are bringing forward activities that are making agriculture from a net emitter to potentially being a climate-positive industry. So climate and agriculture are so intertwined. Right now, 10% of all emissions are from agriculture. Every calorie of food that is produced and delivered takes over 10 calories of energy, mostly fossil fuels. As a young dad, seeing that statistic and hearing it from Michael Pollan would change the way that I thought about food and what I knew we had to do going forward to feed our growing world. This climate smart agriculture and this initiative has the ability to take farmers that are really the ultimate conservationists and have them work in sync with environmentalists. And climate change, it's not political, it's science. And with these initiatives, we're able to work in unity for a better future. With that, I'd like to introduce my panel. And it's truly a stellar panel put together by the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers in Action. So our first speaker will be David Bennell. David is the Food and Nature Program North American Manager for the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Next, we have Leonardo Bastos. Leo is the Commercial Vice President for Bear Crop Science, really one of the foremost companies in agriculture and a critical component of anything that is going to happen in U.S. agriculture or global agriculture. Next, we have Candice Lane. Candice is a VP for Sustainability and Stakeholder Relations at Nutrien, obviously another very critical company in fertilizer and ag products. And then we have Krista Harden. Krista is the Executive VP for the Global Environmental Strategy in the U.S. Dairy Export Council. Krista, I think, has some very interesting perspectives on dairy and what they can do to help climate change. And last we have, and really one of the women that's really put this together, is Erin Fitzgerald. She's CEO of U.S. Farmers and Ranchers in Action. Erin is really a driving force behind climate action in agriculture. So I'm really excited and ready to dig in, and I'd like to start with David Bennell. David's with World Business Council for Sustainable Development, the WBCSD as it's referred to, and heads the Food and Nature Program. He's the North American Manager. And David, thank you very much for really convening this incredible session. I also want to thank Tony Calandra, who worked with you to put this together. Really an amazing group of people and people that are making a difference. Let me get to the first question, David. David, what are the implications for U.S. agriculture considering the UN Sustainable Development Goals? Is there activity in the U.S. right now towards addressing these goals, and what are the priorities?
Neil, thanks so much for your question and also for hosting, and my special thanks to FinTech TV and all of this amazing panel. So as our Climate Week viewers know, the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, were agreed by all member nations of the UN in 2015. And you're right to ask the question specifically about the US, just because it's very topical here right now. US Farmers and Ranchers in Action and WBCSD, along with the consulting firm ERM, just wrote a report looking at the US agricultural sector with the US agricultural sector and identified the key priority goals for the United States in looking at the SDGs. And while the US has really a world-class agricultural production network, companies, farmers, ranchers, growers, we also have the opportunity to sort of make improvements. We've got towering strengths, just like other major food and agricultural producing countries do. And so looking at the SDGs, looking through this lens, we discover that particularly SDG Goal 13 on climate action is a key priority for the US. That's not surprising. It's a key priority for many countries. So yes, very topical, and we'd invite viewers to look either on the USFRA website or on WBCSD's website for that SDG assessment. Over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, David. That's really helpful. Knowing you and the work you've done at the WBCSD and even before that in your career, you've worked with many of the largest investors and banks and financial institutions. And as they are looking at this issue, why would they want to decarbonize their portfolios and especially, where your area of focus is now, why would they decarbonize the food and ag holdings?
Yeah, I instead of calling that the $64,000 question like it used to be, it's like the $64 trillion question. I mean, well, I would say, look, what we've discovered is well-managed companies manage risk well. So, full stop. So whether or not you're seeking alpha as an investor or looking to mitigate risk, what we do understand, there's no upside to the pandemic, of course, but well-managed companies seem to be holding their value better through COVID-19. Now, that shouldn't be a surprise, but ESG, environmental, social, and governance, all of a sudden sort of has moved to the front seat of the car from the back seat. And I would say even specifically of ESG, environmental, social, and governance, social specifically is moving into the front seat and taking its place in the front of the car. So we're watching investors, particularly the institutional investors, retail investors, well, that's another story, really better understanding how to pay attention to ESG sustainability factors and make better decisions about what they own. I mean, at the end of the day, they're trying to make good buy, hold, or sell decisions. And they're finding that, again, well-managed companies manage risk well. So around carbon, around climate, this is becoming sort of a more obvious way for companies to reflect to their owners their practices and for investors to make better ultimate decision making.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you for all the really wonderful work that you're doing at the WBCSD. You've really the Climate Smart initiative is phenomenal, and I'm very excited to help you get the word out, and hopefully we can continue this process.
Thanks, Neil.
Next, I'd like to bring on Leonardo Bastos, and you're the Commercial Vice President for Bayer Crop Science. And so, Leonardo, you lead this carbon business at Bayer, giant company, taken over other really important agricultural companies over the last few years. What does that entail? What's the goal of your business unit? I mean, that's, sorry, I just get right to the point there.
No, that's fine, Neil. I think, I would love to say that we are committed to have a much better future for ourselves, right? So that's one of the things that Bayer, we stand for. So it's something that kind of has been developing for the last three or 4 years. We issued a public commitment last year, by the end of last year, that we want to push this future for our carbon zero agriculture. So the Bayer Carbon Initiative is nothing more than a tangible action that we took, in the last few months to materialize this ambition to really decarbonize agriculture, right? So that's what we're trying to do. We usually say that farmers can actually produce more food without actually having to starve the world, right? So there's also a better play in how we use our natural resources. And the Bayer Carbon Initiative in the end is kind of like what we usually say in our company is a triple win, right? So the environment, the world actually has a benefit on this. Industry, and we know from our own data that by farmers adopting climate smart practices, they not only can sequester more carbon to the soil, but they can produce more food in a more, let's say, resilient way, right? So yields are actually less variability on that. So there's a play in terms of food security. And for farmers, it becomes like, what we say is a new crop, right? So there's an opportunity for them to actually have a new revenue on this. That's kind of like what we're trying to do. We were trying to create something that works for farmers so that everyone can benefit from it. So that's the idea about this.
It's excellent. Thank you very much. Really helpful. So how do we, accelerate it? Specifically, how does Bayer get involved to accelerate the production in, well, first of all, the soil sequestration, the ability to create carbon offsets from it, and the ability to create a market for this? What are you doing?
Neil, I think that we're actually putting our, let's say, best resources at, to work here, right? We are a company that invests millions of dollars, billions of dollars in terms of R&D So in terms of how we sequence genomes and how we develop plants and all these things, that's one piece of that. But I guess, like, being one of the companies that has like a huge and very, let's say, successful digital ag platform, we can power, this initiative by using, let's say, millions of data points that we have like on customers' operations, and then take this credit development, let's put it this way, for a different approach, right? So the use of data models, records and remote sensing, all these things that can actually take this initiative at scale. That's what we want to do, because again, this idea that agriculture can be a carbon neutral activity in the future, it cannot be only like, contained to, let's say, the US or Brazil, which are like projects or initiatives that we announced. We want to take it like global. We want to be able to actually work with farmers in India. And there's no way we can actually do this without the power of like, data science and data modeling and remote sensing in that case. So that's, we're trying to put to work our best, let's say, investments and platforms to really solve that problem for farmers.
Excellent. It's great. And obviously giving them the chance to realize this new crop, to have a new crop on top. It's phenomenal work.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Leo. Really look forward to continuing the discussion. I would love to understand more. Now, Candice Lang is the VP of Sustainability and Stakeholder Relations at Nutrien. And Candice, I'd love to get some perspectives from what you're doing there. And given the potential for U.S. agriculture to be the solution, to be a part of the solution for climate change, why haven't more farmers embraced changes and adopted these new practices? We now are starting to realize what they are. Can you explain some of the barriers and what you're doing to overcome them?
Sure. Thanks, Neil. Let me start by just sharing a perspective from the farm kid that I am. I'm from the farm, and my entire family still farms. And I just, I think we know we have to grow and scale, practices that we're talking about today. But I really want people to know that they are alive and well, and transformation in agriculture is alive and well and already happening. And in my lifetime, so when I was, a kid on the farm in the 80s, we went without a crop year on year. Dry weather, pests ate what came up. And today, it is so exciting and unbelievable that in drier years, that my family still has a decent average crop in drier years where we had nothing in the 1980s. And I think that's really exciting. And to me, it just keeps me fueled on the potential. And we know we have to grow it. And but in that experience too, I just want to convey, when I was going through that with my family in the 80s, it felt very lonely. I actually was mad at the world for not understanding what we were going through and for not understanding what it was like to farm and have all your income in one harvest for the year. And it felt very lonely. And I'm very optimistic, because now we are much better at knowing we're all in this together. And, just a shout out to the USFRA for convening everybody around the table. And, we're grower centric, we're farm centric, and really engaging the value chain, which is just key to this work. No one going it alone is going to go very far. And this year, one of our summer interns, unsolicited, just nailed it. And I'm quoting them, but they said, the value chain will need to be as invested in sustainability as much as we're asking growers to be. And it's quite self-evident. Now, having said that, we're all invested, what do we really have to tackle to grow this and to get it at scale? And I think, we've learned not to look at these aspects separately: economic aspects, environmental aspects. The SDGs, actually, if you dig into them, do a beautiful job of taking a systems approach to solutions, which is good, because when you look at what this is going to take, I think sometimes we look at farmers and go, why aren't they doing this? I mean, there's data, we have the practices, we know, but it does take a bit of a capital investment to change practices. And there is also, a time factor, and making sure it's not burdensome. If you have to make all your money in one harvest, you can't lose a day. You can't lose 6 hours in a day using multiple digital platforms to make sure you have tracked all your and verified all your environmental outcomes. This has to work in a way that takes into account that farm system, that cropping system. And lastly, I think if anybody was in the boots of a farmer, he'd understand her challenge of knowing this is also field by field. This is not just, one size fits all, just do this stuff, farmers. It is precise. It is calculated. It's a lot of planning. This is nature. Nature is the most inconsistent thing to work with. This is not a manufacturing process. So there's a lot that goes into it. But those are a few of the barriers that we have to figure out and work together on, Neil. Thanks.
Wow, fantastic hearing it from your perspective as a farmer, and it's from the heart. Thank you, Candace. Really, really meaningful. I'd love to then know, in your role with Nutrien, and where's the focus of Nutrien on smart agriculture, and what are the unique opportunities? I mean, the obviously the relationships that Nutrien has with growers is it's so strong.
Yeah.
It's symbiotic. So what are you doing what are the efforts that you're focused on in smart ag?
Absolutely. Well, similar to what Leo said, we're also really interested on working with growers to build out greater adoption, and I guess some of the barriers I talked about were economic, but we know there's non-economic barriers as well. So we are that company. We've got over 3,000 agronomists in the field, boots to boots with growers, working with hundreds of thousands of them in the US. And so in a way, you could say we're that sustainability coach in the field, and working through some of the questions, building the comfort, helping do that planning to make sure that the farm system, this all works economically, and we can actually then make that work easier for the growers. As I said, even tracking and verifying those environmental outcomes, that has to be in an integrated system that's really easy for the farm to do. And then that will help growers connect, whether it's with their downstream partners, or will help connect with upstream suppliers that have new sustainability products to really get to the farm. So we're both that in the field coach on sustainability. And again, like USFRA, we think we can help connect and bring everybody into the tent and lifting together on growing the adoption here, Neil.
Great. Well, I'm really grateful to know that, seeing Nutrien and Bayer and majors taking these initiatives. It's a dream that we'd love to have seen 20 years ago, and it's awesome to have it now. So let's keep it going. Next we have, thank you. really excellent. Candace is great. Krista Harden from, she's Executive VP of Global Environment and Strategy for the U.S. Dairy Export Council. Krista, thank you for joining us, and I'm really excited to hear more about what you're doing at the Dairy Council. As the U.S., and I think that the dairy industry's recently set some goals for 2050 to become carbon neutral, which is really exciting, or better, and that's great. What partnerships do farmers need to put in place to get to this goal? It's a big goal, even though you've got some time to get there.
Thank you, Neil. You're right. There is a long runway. It's our goal is set for 2050, but it's going to be a journey, and we don't have all the answers yet. But I think what you're hearing from U.S. dairy farmers, 35,000 of them, in our industry say, hey, we're committed to be part of the solution. We want to define ourselves. We were kind of tired of others saying, hey, you're a problem, you're a problem. We're looking for answers. We're investing in research. We're partnering with others for new practices, for technologies, really trying to build the case for each farmer. And we were talking earlier on our panel about how diverse agriculture is, and certainly dairies are for sure. Dairy to dairy, neighbor to neighbor, sibling to sibling, they're all different. So they're going to require different tools, different resources to accomplish these goals, but they're committed to it. That's the one thing that's common across dairyland is they want to be good stewards. They want to be part of the solution. And I think setting those goals, saying we're not going to buy somebody else's credits. We're not going to lean on another industry or part of our industry. We're going to do this ourselves, no matter what it takes, what it costs. There's a lot of societal benefits from, I think, dairy staking, putting the stake in the ground. And we'll look forward to, over the next years trying to accomplish that. If I was a betting girl, Neil, I'd say we'll get there before 2050. I'm not a betting girl, so I'm not going to say that on record. But I think that the commitment is there. The attitude, the forces within our industry are to continue to be striving towards being part of the solution.
Thank you very much, Krista. I'll tell you, I take that bet. I'm with you. I think that you guys will hit it much sooner. And, the dairy industry is not as an easy time either price-wise. And I know there's been stresses and there's going to be costs to hit those targets. So, is this something you'll need outside investment for? Is this, because I've been involved in, biogas transactions. There's all sorts of things that can be done to make dairies cleaner and better. And, but they are not cheap. So I'd love to hear more about how you guys plan to go about that.
I think you hit on really the biggest obstacle, frankly, is just cost. Technologies are expensive. Putting in new practices are expensive. Some have to take a while to develop. And again, they don't all work on every farm. And so really this cannot be done solely in the backs of farmers. I too am the daughter of farmers. I know exactly what, how tight the margins are, how tough it is. Many of them are just hanging on. And then to say, try this new technologies, try this new practices, invest in this science. It's very difficult for it to only be farmers at the table. The benefits of doing this work truly will help everyone on the globe. So that investment really needs to help with other partners and others coming to the table. Some of my corporate friends on here, I may be twisting some arms during a break to say, hey, invest in dairy. We're a good bet. We're doing so much on our farms ourselves, but we do need help and support. And I look forward really to the day when everyone recognizes this cannot just be done by farmers and ranchers themselves. They really do need sponsors, not only in agriculture, frankly, but in the broader sense of society to really step up and help us achieve these goals. We're going to do it. We're going to get there. We're going to make a difference, but it will happen quicker and it will happen easier the more of us that are involved in helping each other.
That's excellent. Thank you very much. Obviously, I couldn't imagine a world without cheese, so please get there quickly.
I love that. You made my day.
So, wow, thank you very much. And I think my kids without cheese they'd starve. Okay, so and by the way, I do have other questions for you, but I guess we should move on. But I'd love to know how you don't damage smaller dairies, because honestly, for them, I could just see this leading to mass, roll-ups that would be detrimental to many of the family farms. And I'd love to hear more about that. We might not have time for it, but that'd be an interesting topic to cover.
Well, can I just say one thing, that this really has to be inclusive of all dairies. This has to help every dairy find their answers. Some of our smallest dairies may get there quicker. Some of our largest ones may get there quicker. It may be the mid-size and the middle that have a little bit harder time. But we've got to find answers so collectively we can achieve these goals. This is not about leaving anybody behind. It's about bringing everybody along.
Really excellent. Thank you, Krista. It's really meaningful and, great discussion to have. Thank you. So now to back cleanup here, and Aaron Fitzgerald, CEO of U.S. Farmers Around in Action, and Aaron, you have been a driving force in moving this forward and really getting everybody on board, and it's really exciting. And I know you're just finishing up your big annual conference, and I'm sure you've learned a lot. And I'm really excited to hear more about. If you want to just talk maybe a little bit of history about your organization and this conference, what your goals are, what your plans are, where you're going. I'm going to leave it to you because there's a lot to talk about.
Well, first of all, thanks for having farmers actually on this topic on the agenda of Climate Week. I think sometimes we forget that this sector really can help with climate change, and it's really exciting that you guys are taking this on to put all these leaders on this panel front and center next week. So we're really excited to be here. So yeah, we hosted, we tried to go do the digital Zoom boom and bring about 250 leaders together before Climate Week, really as a key to 2020 is the year of action, right, for climate action. And frankly, we can think of no other sector that is prepared to meet the Sustainable Development Goals than food and agriculture. We have 30 harvests to get this right. It's our universal grand challenge. And it's the scale of innovation is unprecedented, and it needs to be at the forefront of every single leader in the country, really, and investment to really help us meet that grand challenge. And I think you heard from many of our panelists today that this is nature, this is farming, this is not easy. And every farm in the United States and around the world, each growing season, they have a chance to get it right in the face of climate change. And over the last 2 harvest seasons, it was probably the most challenging in a generation. You know, Candace was talking about the 80s. And I know every farmer I know was planting for hope this spring, and then COVID hit. So every leader in the food and ag sector has truly been tested. We often hear about the health sector being called into battle. You know, the food and ag sector has been as well. And we are an essential sector. When I think about the ability to reduce the footprint, really solve for climate change, that is food and ag. We, you know, going back to our 6th grade biology, right? It's the brown stuff and the green stuff, and probably my aquaculture farmers would say the blue stuff too, that can solve for climate change. And let's get back to basics. Those are the machines, the natural machines that really can solve for climate change. But as well, this sector can have an incredible handprint. I think about sector's ability to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. We are a sector that has 15% of the American workforce that is committed through this notion of stewardship. So when you think about a force of nature that can really go and really live the values of the Sustainable Development Goals, you know, we're excited for the next decade. We think about the values being espoused during Climate Action Week. This is the sector where we think that we can really unlock the potential. So we're excited to have this conversation about investment and launching that decade of action really with ag.
That people, you know, many people don't realize how innovative and flexible really farmers are and need to be to manage all sorts of natural weather and other types of disasters and market changes and consumer trends. And, you know, farmers tend to deal with it all and I find them to be really innovative and adopt whatever, you know, technologies and changes can help them succeed and keep the farm. I'm wondering, you know, as you look at the innovations and what needs to be done for climate change and for you know, to benefit farmers and consumers, what are some of the innovations? What are some of the what do you consider some of the promising innovations and practices that you could discuss?
Well, first of all, I mean, you're right. Many of our farmers are very much tinkers and entrepreneurs in their own right. I think Candace really spoke to it. It's the hyper specificity that's happening at an acreage or sub acreage or in growing. So the biology of growing those plants to make them climate adaptive and resilient. We're also seeing, as Krista could easily talk about, really cool innovations that are happening with genetics of our animals, as well as the poop that could be used to act as a soil amendment, actually. And we're finding out there's lots of very cool things that are happening in that. So agriculture is really, I would say, on the frontiers of really innovation, particularly around soils. We know more about the surface of Mars, actually, than we do know about our soils. So, I mean, we've got a long ways to go, but we're learning very quickly. And I think that is while we know that there's this whole innovation field that's happening, we need to make certain it's accessible to our farmers. So I think what I love about the panel and focus today is about financial innovation. We have to have fintech alongside this innovation. You know, I look at the renewable energy sector. Over 10 years, they were able to really launch that sector, largely because there was innovation around financial mechanisms. And I think that we in agriculture are really looking to engage in this conversation to really drive investment in this sector for many of these new technologies to make it accessible for our farmers.
That's great. It's funny, I was involved in some of the early REC papers, and at that point, windmills were better for firewood. They were not that effective, and we've gotten to the point now, you're right. So it's exciting. I found it, you know, I've been in this for a while, and I'm learning, which is great. But I do want to give everybody a chance to kind of leave our audience with a thought for how we move forward and really how smart agriculture is a big part of the solution. Not just technically, but it drives a part of our country, of our world, that is so critical to get involved in being part of the solution. So I'm going to start, with you, David, actually, since you kicked it off, or actually I'll go in reverse order. I'm sorry. I'm going to start with you, Aaron, and let you kind of give us what is your closing thought here? Because I'm just really excited about what you've been doing at U.S. Ranchers and Farmers, and how do we move that forward?
Like many of the panelists, we're so excited that agriculture and farmers, the topic of farmers and ranchers, is included in Climate Week. We haven't been here before, largely because it's harvest season usually when Climate Week is going on. So our farmers are boots dirty in the field, getting the job done. But just want to leave all those financial investors really listening. In order to enable a transitional net zero economy, agriculture is likely the only sector that can meet the challenges of the next decade. There's a lot of innovations that are potential could emerge by 2030. But if you really want to look at the carbon mitigation potential in the next 10 years, the rural vibrancy and economic drivers that can really mobilize new jobs and investment and green growth, this is the sector where investment needs to happen. We are the sector that can get it done. When we sequester one climate smart action on our farms, that pays it forward for 2040 and 2050. So the time frame in when this investment happens is now. And as I think about climate action, this is the sector to be investing in to really hit our goals. So really appreciate everyone putting this front and center.
Amen. That's great statement. Thank you very much. All right, now I'm going to ask a couple statements. That was great, Aaron. Thank you. Fantastic. David, do you have a closing statement?
Yeah, Neil, thanks so much to you, and thanks to our panelists and FinTech TV. Yeah, I guess my closing thought is, listen, soils are sexy. Really, soils are sexy. They're so important, and who could be more important than our farmers and ranchers in terms of their relationship to the soil, their ability to help us meet carbon goals, to feed the planet a healthy, sustainable diet. I think the call to action here is to get engaged, whether you're a corporate member of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, get involved with your local ranching and farming community, make important, informed decisions about what you're buying, and thank a farmer and rancher when you next see one. Thanks so much, Neil.
Thank you. Hey, Candace, I loved your perspective as a farmer and family still involved, and I think everyone here has been involved, but I would love to get your closing thoughts.
Well, my closing thoughts, I'll talk about demand and start that off by saying I've not really met a farmer ever who isn't completely happy to meet the needs of customers in their value chain. But as opposed to demanding how farmers farm, I think the demand has to be in valuing what we want, with the farmer being able to deliver ecosystem services, whether that's sequestering carbon in soils to a greater extent or other ecosystem services such as water. And if we value that as customers or other value chain players and make sure that's translating to the farm and farmer, I have no doubt we will meet our goals and have a much better 2050 world that's in line with our ambitions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. It's great. And Krista, I'd love to get your perspective here as we close up.
Yeah, first of all, I would say thank you, like all the panelists have said, for really giving us this opportunity maybe to set the record straight a little bit about what's happening in current day U.S. agriculture. I think folks are looking backward, dairy farmers are looking forward. They're investing, they're committing, they're excited about what's to come. They need partners. They need partners who believe in the same things and want to be part of that solution, who want to help them be part of the solution. So the tent is big, the needs are great, but we want to be part of the leading force to really set the record straight. So thank you for letting us be here.
Thank you. Thank you. And Leo, looking forward to hearing your comments here. Thank you.
I want to say, thank you to everyone here in the panel. I think it's a great discussion. It's something that's close to our hearts as a company, right? So I think it's, what we say usually, and I think that's something that we want to live, every day is, every dollar that is spent in innovation should be a dollar that we also spend in sustainability, right? So that's the way that we believe that we can actually have a play or a part in this puzzle, right? How to address the challenges that make farmers actually produce more, use better, make better use of their natural resources, and really like live to the promise that when I talk to all farmers, they're true environmentalists. So they care for the land, for the property, for generations to come. So this is what we're trying to do. I think that, if we all have the same purpose, we're going to get it there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. All right, guys. Thank you. It was a great session, and we'll look forward to the next one.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for the
you.
invite.
Bye.
All the best. Cheers.